welcome to this week's edition of Cruising with the Buckeye Guys. Today we're going to do block sanding and stripping a car to bare steel. I have Jason and I have Shawn here who's going to show you guys how to do it at home. It's a very difficult process, probably the most critical part to your restoration project or your paint job. What we have here in front of us is a car that's been stripped media blasted to bare steel. What we're going to do is to run a DA over it to get it all clean. We'll wax and grease, remove everything, get the surface clean, and put an epoxy primer. The reason we use epoxy primer is on etch primers, body fillers are not compatible with them. I'm standing in front of a 67 Mustang here that's in bare steel. The reason why we go to bare steel on any restoration project, the stuff comes from overseas, the steel, and it's either a black E-coat or a silver weld-through primer. Overseas, the product is stamped, and then once they stamp the process, the sheet metal, and form it, it sits outside for a long time before it goes to the paint process line. And they're E-coating over steel or rust, or E-coating over any imperfections that show up are the weld-through primer. So what we have to do is take all this off so the paint manufacturer will warranty the finish on this car. And what was been done here, it's gone to media blast. And media blast people, they won't sandblast the roof or they won't sandblast the deck lid or the hood. Reason being so it'll warp if it's done. And now what we're going to do is this will be all fully cleaned and go to epoxy.
What we're going to do now is we're going to prep this deck lid for paint with the first step of removing the E-coat that comes from the manufacturer. As you can see, it does have some bird droppings on it. What we're going to do is we're going to take this DA. This is a dual action sander. We're going to put an 80 grit paper on there, and what this does is it spins as well as oscillates. So when you're sanding this material, it's given 3 to 4 different ways that this is sanding all at the same time, so it helps remove that material and keep that surface smoother. So we'll give you a quick show on how this goes. What we're doing is we're removing the E-coat. It's not a very fast process, as you can see, but we want to get down to the bare steel. Okay, as you can see, we're hitting bare steel now, and if you guys notice, I have rubber gloves on my hands, and the reason for that being is anytime you're touching raw steel, there's oils and all kinds of other contaminants that can be in your hand that will contaminate this steel. And if you leave a handprint with any oil on there and come back to this panel, let's say 4 hours later, there's going to be a giant rust spot on this panel. And we definitely don't want that, because now we have to go back to the 80 or even a 36 grade sandpaper to get that rust spot out. And then we have to start the whole process over again. So basically you're kind of working against yourself if that happens. So once we get to the bare metal here, as you can see, I have a small spot started. We're gonna do the 80 grit, and then once we're done with the 80 grit, we're gonna M600 this. And what that M600 is a chemical made by Sickens. And basically what this stuff does is a degreaser and contaminant remover. So once we M600 this section here, it's just a small section for an example, but this is now ready for an E-coat or a primer. This hood is almost completely stripped except for the vent areas here, which I will have to do by hand. The next process now is going to be the M600, which is a chemical, again, made by one of our paint products, and it's going to remove all of the contaminants here in this paint and get that dust, the oil, and all that stuff. As you can see, just that little bit. We're going to do another little spot here, and we'll just show you just this small area here around this vent. You can see how much contaminant that I'm getting off of it, just this small section of the hood of this car, and we definitely don't want that in our paint.
Today I'm going to be finish blocking this top of this door here. What it has on it is a high solids primer. All the body work's done, and there's a guide coat over top of the primer. The guide coat's so that you can see any low spots or any deep scratches that are still left in the bodywork. And all the guide coat really is a flat black spray paint. You just spray it on there lightly. We actually buy something called guide coat. You could use regular spray paint though. Most people do. What I have is 2 blocks that I use pretty much for everything. Doesn't matter the brand. It just matters that they're flat and smooth. The sandpaper I have on them it's Norton 320. This isn't going to be the finished block. There's one more sanding step after this, which will probably be 600 or 800 grit sandpaper. But what you do with blocking, you always want to block in an X pattern. If you sand up and down like this, you're going to get a low spot there. So if you go ahead and you sand, you block over the panel. And that's just one pass there, and you could actually see the scratches that are left in the bodywork here. What you want to do, you want to block until all of the guide coat's gone. You don't want to hit bare metal though, because then you'll have to reprime and do it all over again. So I'll usually do 3 or 4 passes and then wipe it off and see where I'm at. Check my sandpaper, make sure everything's all good. You can see a lot of the scratches are coming out. The primer that's on it here is it's a high build, I believe epoxy primer. And it fills in those scratches real well and low spots and all that stuff. Now the reason for going 2 different directions with the X pattern is if you continuously go in one direction, eventually your sandpaper is going to stop cutting. If you do the X pattern like I'm doing, it keeps the material easier to cut. The reason for final blocking is so that to ensure a straight panel. A lot of places, or a lot of people, will only block the car once or twice. We usually end up blocking the car 3 to 4 times, just to make sure that they're perfectly straight. There's nothing worse than seeing a car that just got done and it's wavy and just looks bad.
Hopefully everyone at home enjoyed watching Cruising with the Buckeye Guys today. As you can see, we do a lot here at Buckeye Classic Car Restoration. Is always make sure when you don't know what to do, bring your car to a professional restoration shop like ours.